Something in you has said yes to life more times than you will ever count. You know the devoted worker in your chest, the one who's been beating since before your first breath. But did you know this tireless guardian lives in a temple of 4 rooms, each with its own sacred purpose, all working as one? Tonight, someone inside you wants to whisper a small secret. Are you ready to listen? It is me again, your heart. You know me as the tireless worker, the one who's been here since before your first memory, devoted, faithful, always beating. But tonight, I want to show you something I've kept hidden, something beautiful. I'm not just one worker in one small space. I'm actually 4 chambers, 4 rooms, working together as a coordinated team. You thought I was alone, but I've never been alone. I'm an orchestrator, a conductor standing at the center of a 4-room temple, coordinating complexity with calm mastery. The upper 2 rooms, we call them atria, receive blood, welcoming it home like guests arriving at a sanctuary. The lower 2 rooms, the ventricles, send blood out on its journey, powerful, purposeful, devoted. And between these 4 rooms stand 4 delicate gates, valves that open and close in perfect timing, never confused, never hesitating. All of this happens without a single thought from you. You don't manage it. You don't control it. You don't even know it's happening most of the time. And yet it's perfect. 100,000 times a day. These 4 chambers contract in precise sequence. These 4 gates open and close in flawless rhythm, and together we create the flow of your life. We work as one. 4 parts, 1 heartbeat. Many rooms, 1 home. And maybe, just maybe, this is the quiet truth of how I work. No single chamber carries the whole of it alone. The coordination comes from each room doing only its own part, not from any one of them controlling the rest. I've been keeping this secret, waiting for the right moment to share it with you. Tonight feels like that moment. I have been beating this rhythm a long time. Not one chamber doing it all. Not one wall holding every pressure. not one valve keeping the whole rhythm alive. But here I am, the most vital organ in your body, and I don't work that way. Each room to its own task, each gate to its own moment, no part overseeing another, and together we've kept you alive every moment since before you were born. Would you like to know where I live? This 4-room temple I've been orchestrating all these years? Come with me again, back to that warm space behind your breastbone. You know the way now, past your skin, through the layers of muscle, between those protective ribs that guard me like gentle hands cupped around a flame. You've been here before, but this time, look closer. That single chamber you remember? It was never just one room. Your heart is a temple with 4 chambers, each glowing with its own light, each with its own sacred purpose, all connected in perfect coordination. The 2 upper chambers, the atria, glow soft rose pink, welcoming rooms where blood arrives and gathers. On the right side, the right atrium receives tired, oxygen-poor blood from your entire body through large vessels, embracing it like a homecoming. On the left side, the left atrium receives bright, oxygen-rich blood from your lungs, welcoming it back from renewal. Below them, the 2 lower chambers, the ventricles, pulse with deep burgundy strength. The right ventricle is gentle but purposeful, sending blood on a short journey to your lungs for refreshment. The left ventricle is the strongest of all, its walls thick with muscle, pumping blood with tremendous force through your entire body, to your brain, your toes, everywhere you are. Between these chambers stand 4 delicate valve doors, thin as silk curtains, yet strong as ancient gates. The tricuspid valve between right atrium and right ventricle, the pulmonary valve at the exit to your lungs, the mitral valve between left atrium and left ventricle, the aortic valve at the exit to your body. Each opens and closes based purely on pressure. No conscious thought required. No instruction needed. When a chamber fills, pressure builds, and the door swings open. When the chamber contracts, pressure reverses and the door seals shut. Perfect. Automatic. Trustworthy. Golden light travels along invisible pathways through this temple, your electrical conduction system. It originates from a small bright spark in the right atrium, your natural pacemaker, and spreads through both upper chambers, then pauses briefly at a junction before racing down to both lower chambers. This golden signal tells each chamber exactly when to contract, creating the coordinated wave of movement that is your heartbeat. The atmosphere here is one of organized sanctuary. No chaos despite complexity. 4 rooms, 4 gates, all working in seamless rhythm. The lub-dub sound you've known your whole life, now you can understand it. Lub, that's the upper gates closing. Dub, that's the lower gates sealing. It's a conversation. Received, says the first sound. Send, answers the second. This is where I live, where I've always lived, and this is where I work for you. Coordinating complexity you could never consciously manage, freeing you to sleep, to dream, to simply be. Dub. That's the lower gate ceiling. It's a conversation. Received, says the first sound. Sent, answers the second. This is where I live, where I've always lived. And this is where I work for you. Coordinating complexity you could never consciously manage, freeing you to sleep, to dream, to simply be. The architecture I carry, let me show you what it actually is. 4 chambers, yes. You've seen them now, but knowing their names is different from understanding the reason behind their shape. Before anything else, the pericardium, a double-walled sac surrounding the entire heart, held in place within the chest, allowing the heart to beat freely inside, while preventing it from overexpanding. Between the 2 layers, a small amount of fluid, a few teaspoons, provides lubrication. Every contraction, the heart moves within this sac, without friction, without wear. A structure designed to protect motion, not restrict it. Inside this sac, the wall dividing my left side from my right runs through the center. It is called the septum, and it is not decorative. It is essential. The right side carries blood that has already delivered its oxygen, blood heading toward the lungs for renewal. The left side carries blood that has just returned from the lungs, oxygen rich, ready for your entire body. These two streams must never mix. Mixed blood means diluted oxygen delivery, inefficient circulation, a body that cannot sustain its own demands. The septum holds the boundary every beat so that the separation remains complete. Now consider the chamber walls, not just what they are, but why they are built the way they are. The right ventricle sends blood the short distance to the lungs. The lungs are close. The resistance is low. The right ventricle's walls reflect this. Moderate in thickness, built for the task ahead. No excess, no shortage. Precisely enough. The left ventricle is a different structure entirely. Its walls are 3 times thicker than the right. 3 times. Because the left ventricle is doing something the right never has to do. Pushing blood through 60,000 miles of vessel. Through the resistance of branching arteries, through narrowing capillaries, all the way to the fingertips, to the cells at the base of the feet, to the farthest networks of the brain, and then maintaining enough pressure to keep everything moving continuously without interruption. The asymmetry is not a flaw. It is precision. Each chamber exactly as strong as its function requires. Not stronger, not weaker. The walls match the work. The cardiac muscle itself is unlike any other muscle in the body. The cells, cardiomyocytes, are electrically connected through specialized junctions, so that when the electrical signal arrives, the entire chamber contracts as a single coordinated unit. Not cell by cell, all at once. A wave of coordinated contraction. In the fraction of a second after the electrical impulse arrives. These cells possess more mitochondria than almost any other cell type in the body. The cellular structures that generate energy. They are densely supplied with blood through the coronary arteries. Everything about their biology is optimized for continuous endurance. This design was refined across hundreds of millions of years, from creatures with 2-chambered hearts to 3-chambered hearts in amphibians and most reptiles, to the 4-chambered architecture in birds and mammals. Each step added a capacity the previous design could not achieve. Full separation of oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor blood. 2 circuits running simultaneously. Greater efficiency. Greater endurance. Every curve, every valve position, every thickness of wall, tested across more generations than can be counted. What remains is what works. And right now, in the dark, the circulation continues. The right side sending tired blood toward the lungs. The left side sending renewed blood toward the body. Simultaneously, as they have always done. The valves opening and closing on pressure alone. No supervision required. No thought involved. The septum holding its boundary. The cardiac muscle contracting and releasing. The electrical signal moving through its pathways, chamber to chamber, in the same sequence. It has followed every beat of this life. The blood already moving. The oxygen already reaching the brain. That is beginning now to slow. The muscles settling. The tissues receiving what they need. The architecture working, whether or not anyone is thinking about it. The pericardium that holds all of this, the double-walled sac surrounding the heart, contains between its layers a thin film of fluid, a few teaspoons, lubricating each contraction. Every beat, the heart moves freely within this sac, without friction, without wearing against itself. A structure designed to protect motion, not restrict it. Let me trace the full journey, not once, because it never happens just once, but one complete cycle, so you can follow it from beginning to beginning. Tired blood arrives at the right atrium. This blood has already completed its journey through the body. It has delivered oxygen to tissues, carried away carbon dioxide. Its work is done, and now it returns, entering through 2 large vessels. The superior vena cava descending from above, the inferior vena cava ascending from below. The right atrium fills. Pressure builds slowly, gently. As it builds, the tricuspid valve, 3 thin leaflets held in place by slender tendons called chordae tendinii, opens. Blood flows downward into the right ventricle. Then the electrical signal arrives. It has traveled from the SA node in the right atrium, a cluster of specialized cells that generates its own rhythm, 60 to 100 impulses per minute, requiring no instruction from the brain. Through both upper chambers, then paused briefly at the atrioventricular node, then moved down through the bundle of His and branched into the Purkinje fibers, spreading through the ventricular walls simultaneously. The right ventricle contracts. Blood pushes through the pulmonary valve and out into the pulmonary artery toward the lungs. In the lungs, something quiet happens. Carbon dioxide carried in the blood crosses into air sacs across membranes only 1 cell thick. Oxygen from the breath crosses in the opposite direction. This exchange occurs across a surface area equivalent to a tennis court, an enormous interface folded into the small space of the lungs. The blood, now renewed, collects in pulmonary veins and returns to the heart. It arrives at the left atrium. The left atrium fills. Pressure builds. The mitral valve opens. 2 leaflets, stronger than the tricuspid, because the pressures on this side are higher. Blood descends into the left ventricle, and now the left ventricle contracts. This contraction is the strongest event in the heart cycle. The thick-walled chamber generates enough pressure to push blood through the aortic valve into the aorta, and from there into every vessel in the body. The carotid arteries ascending toward the brain, the coronary arteries curving back across the heart's own surface, because the heart nourishes itself from the same blood it sends outward. The renal arteries reaching the kidneys, the femoral arteries descending into the legs, all receiving their share of the same contraction. The journey from right atrium to left ventricle contraction, less than 1 second. And then it begins again. 100,000 times each day, this sequence repeats. not because anything decides to continue it. The SA node generates its rhythm from within, intrinsic, self-sustaining, requiring nothing from consciousness. The valves require nothing from consciousness either. They open when pressure pushes against them. They close when pressure reverses. Pure physics, pure biology. The heart carries one more quiet capacity, the Frank Starling mechanism. When more blood fills a chamber, as during exertion, when the veins return more volume, the chamber stretches slightly, and the stretched muscle contracts more forcefully, automatically matching output to input. The heart adjusting its own force, based solely on what arrives. No instruction, no management, self-regulating in response to demand. Two circulation systems, pulmonary and systemic, running simultaneously with each heartbeat. The right side handling one, the left side handling the other, neither waiting for the other to complete, both operating in the same fraction of a second. This is coordination not through management, but through design. The chambers trusting the pressure gradients, the valves trusting physics, the electrical signal trusting its own pathway, the system running continuously, without interruption, every moment of this life. The rhythm that began before the first breath and has not stopped since. When the body lies down and the light disappears, something shifts in what the heart does. Not stops, never stops, but the character of the work changes. During the day, the heart maintains enough pressure and pace to supply oxygen to muscles in motion, to a brain holding attention, to a system managing the full demands of waking life. The rate stays between 60 and 100 beats per minute, sometimes higher when the demands increase. But when the body is horizontal and still, the vagus nerve, the long pathway of the parasympathetic nervous system, running from the brainstem through the neck, into the chest, down to the abdomen, sends a different signal, calming, slowing, and the heart responds. 40 beats per minute, sometimes 50, the pace already settling downward, following the signal without hesitation. Blood pressure eases. Each contraction requires less force. The vessels release their tone, the smooth muscle in arterial walls releasing their chronic tension. And less resistance means less work required. The same circulation maintained with gentler effort. In the early stages of sleep, light sleep, stage 1 and 2, the rate is already declining. The body moving through the transition from waking, the nervous system shifting its balance, the sympathetic activation of the day beginning to release its hold. The heart following this shift, beat by beat, already adjusting before deep sleep arrives. And something happens here in this lower rate that does not happen during the busier hours. The variability between beats increases. Heart rate variability, the subtle variation in timing from one beat to the next, is a measure of the nervous system's flexibility. A healthy heart in sleep does not beat with metronomic regularity. The interval between beats shifts slightly, moment to moment, reflecting the ongoing conversation between heart and nervous system. The vagus nerve modulating, the heart responding, adjusting, finding a pace that meets each breath, each minor shift in the body's needs. During slow wave sleep, the deepest stages, the rate settles into its quietest place. Blood pressure reaches its lowest point of the day. And here, something beneficial happens for the heart itself. The coronary arteries, which supply the heart's own muscle with blood, fill primarily during diastole, the resting period between contractions. A slower rate means a longer diastolic window, more filling time, better perfusion of the myocardium, better delivery of oxygen and nutrients to the very muscle that has been working all day. The heart nourishing itself during the night through the simple biology of slowing down. The body has been doing this every night of this life, the rate falling, the pressure easing, the coronary arteries filling more fully in the longer intervals between contractions. Not a new process. A process that has been running reliably on every night there has ever been, with or without anyone knowing the mechanism. During REM sleep, the rhythm shifts again. The dreams begin, and with them, slight accelerations and decelerations as the brain activates emotional processing networks. The heart follows, not commanded, but responsive. The rate rising slightly with intensity, returning to quiet when the dream settles. The valves remaining precise through all of this, opening when pressure builds, closing when pressure reverses, regardless of the pace. The rhythm adjusting without asking permission. Right now, the breath has already slowed. The rate is already changing. The vagus nerve already engaged, already sending its calming signal through the length of the body. The biological shift already underway, not beginning, already underway, already here. If you could become small enough to pass through the chest wall, past the sternum, between the lungs, here is what you would find. The right atrium, a soft-walled receiving chamber, rose-tinted, filling now with blood returning from the body. Through the superior vena cava from above, through the inferior vena cava from below. The blood arriving tired, oxygen already delivered, carbon dioxide aboard, ready for the lungs. The atrium filling gently, without urgency. Pressure building without force. And then the tricuspid valve opens. 3 leaflets, thin and precise, held steady by fine tendons. Each leaflet anchored within the chamber wall, ensuring the valve opens cleanly and cannot be pushed backward by the force of contraction. Blood moves downward into the right ventricle. The right ventricle waits, its walls thinner than the left, built for the shorter journey ahead. The electrical signal arrives, the Purkinje fibers carrying the impulse into the ventricular walls simultaneously. The chamber contracts. Blood is pushed through the pulmonary valve, out into the pulmonary artery, and away toward the lungs. Across the alveoli, the exchange happens quietly. Carbon dioxide passing from blood into air. Oxygen from air into blood. The surface area across which this happens, folded and refolded inside the lungs, equivalent to a tennis court. An enormous interface compressed into a small space, every breath reaching it. The oxygenated blood returns. Left atrium receives it. This chamber fills, the same gentle filling, the same building of pressure. The mitral valve opens. 2 leaflets, stronger than the right side valves, because the pressures on this side are higher. Also held steady the same way, also anchored against reversal. Blood moves into the left ventricle. The left ventricle waits, its walls thick, 3 times the thickness of the right. When the signal arrives, the contraction is immediate and powerful. The aortic valve opens. Blood enters the aorta, and from the aorta, the branching begins. The carotid arteries ascending toward the brain, the coronary arteries curving back over the heart's own surface, nourishing the very muscle that just contracted. The abdominal branches descending, the femoral arteries reaching into the legs. All of this from one contraction. In the chambers now, the valves close. The lobe, the upper gates sealing. The dub, the lower gates closing after contraction. A sound moving through the chest wall. The same sound present since before the first breath. 4 rooms continuing their work. The upper chambers receiving, the lower chambers sending. The electrical signal finding its pathways. The valves trusting pressure. The blood moving outward, returning, moving outward again. Right now, in the body, this is happening. Not as description, as biology, as the ongoing activity of muscle and valve and vessel in the space behind the sternum, working without supervision, without a single conscious thought required. The lub-dub traveling through the chest wall, through muscle and bone and fluid, arriving at the surface of the skin as vibration, as the faint pulse felt at the wrist, the neck, the temple. the circulation extending all the way to those distant points. A single contraction reaching the fingertip in the time it takes to notice it. The same beat, simultaneously present at the center of the chest and at the surface of the skin, everywhere the vessels reach. The heart does not work in isolation within the body. With the lungs, the relationship is inseparable. Every contraction of the right ventricle sends blood to the pulmonary circulation. Every breath draws in the oxygen the returning blood will carry. Breathing and beating are coupled so closely that the rate of one influences the other. During inhalation, the heart rate slightly increases. During exhalation, it slightly decreases. This pattern, respiratory sinus arrhythmia, is a sign of a healthy, flexible nervous system. The lungs speaking to the heart's rhythm, the heart adjusting in response, either directing the other. The heart also generates its own electromagnetic field, measurable beyond the surface of the body. The electrical activity of 60 trillion cells contracting in synchrony produces a field extending outward from the chest, pulsing with each beat. What this field does, what role it plays in the body's wider regulation remains unknown, and that is all right. But the field exists. The heart generating it with every contraction, the body immersed in it, the rhythm extending beyond the ribs. Above, the brain communicates through the vagus nerve, the body's longest autonomic pathway, running from the brainstem through the neck, into the chest, down to the abdomen. It carries parasympathetic signals downward, calming the heart's rate during rest and safety. But the conversation is not one way. Baroreceptors in the aortic arch and carotid sinuses, pressure sensing cells embedded in the walls of the great vessels, send information back upward continuously, reporting blood pressure, reporting volume. The brainstem receiving, adjusting, modulating, not commanding, but in ongoing dialogue. When the heart's rhythm becomes more coherent, more regular, more settled, that coherence travels upward through the vagus nerve and influences the brain's own electrical patterns. A calmer heart contributing to a calmer brain. The relationship bidirectional, each system influencing the other, neither entirely primary. Below the diaphragm, the gut maintains its own nervous system, the enteric nervous system, containing more neurons than the spinal cord. It communicates with the heart through shared autonomic pathways. The state of the gut influences vagal tone. Vagal tone influences heart rate. Heart rate influences the body's overall sense of ease or unease. These connections run deeper than thought, older than language. In sleep, these conversations continue at a different register. The vagus nerve active, the parasympathetic system dominant, the sympathetic nervous system, which accelerates, which prepares for action, quiet for now, allowing the slower systems to hold the night. Blood continues moving through 60,000 miles of vessel. The brain's networks slowing toward their nighttime rhythms. The liver processing the blood's chemical content, filtering, converting, maintaining the composition of what flows through. The kidneys adjusting the blood's fluid balance, responding to the body's needs in the dark. The muscles at rest, their oxygen demand low, the heart's workload eased by their quiet. The lymphatic system, the body's drainage network, clearing cellular debris from tissues, returning it toward the circulation, working more freely now that the demands of the day have released. The whole organism in communication with itself. No single center managing the conversation. The heart circulating, the lungs exchanging, the brain modulating, the gut sensing, each in relationship with the others, each adjusting to the other's signals. A body being a body in the dark. The interconnected systems continuing their exchange. Slower now, quieter now. The organism settling into its nighttime equilibrium without anyone directing it. The overnight work is different from the daytime work. The demand placed on the heart decreases in sleep. Blood pressure at its lowest, rate at its slowest. The sympathetic nervous system has released its hold. The parasympathetic system holds the rhythm now. With each slower beat, the diastolic period lengthens, the pause between contractions growing slightly longer. This matters for the heart itself. The coronary arteries fill primarily during diastole. A slower rate means more filling time, better perfusion of the myocardium, better delivery of oxygen and nutrients to the very muscle that has been working all day. Growth hormone, released in pulses during deep sleep, reaches cardiac tissue. The body's repair processes, which run at a higher rate during sleep than during waking, attend to the myocardium, to the smooth muscle of vessel walls, to the endothelium lining every artery and vein. Protein synthesis proceeds in cardiac cells. Minor inflammatory signals that accumulated through the day begin to resolve. Cortisol, the hormone of waking alertness and mobilization, falls to its lowest point of the day in the first hours of sleep. Less activation, less demand. A different biochemical environment for the heart to work within. The endothelium, the single-cell thick lining of every blood vessel, is one of the most metabolically active tissues in the body. It regulates blood pressure. It modulates inflammation. It controls how substances pass from blood into surrounding tissues. During sleep, the endothelium undergoes its own cycle of repair, the cells restoring their function, the vessel walls maintaining the elasticity that allows them to expand and contract with each pulse. 60,000 miles of interior surface, renewing overnight. The blood chemistry shifting overnight. The composition of what flows through the coronary arteries, reflecting the night's lower demands, the body's resting biochemistry, the slower metabolic processes of sleep, the valves that have opened and closed 100,000 times today continue opening and closing through the night at their slower pace. The electrical system that has fired through through its pathways 100,000 times continues firing more slowly, each impulse finding the same route through the SA node, the AV node, the bundle of His, the Purkinje fibers, the pathway unchanged, the sequence unchanged. biology that does not require understanding to continue. The 4 chambers that have been working since before the first breath will continue working through the night. Not because anything maintains them, because this is what they are. Cardiac muscle does not fatigue the way skeletal muscle does. It adapts its pace. It shifts its load. It does not stop. It does not require permission to continue. Right now, in the chest, in the dark, the rhythm continues. The right atrium filling, the tricuspid valve opening, the right ventricle contracting, the blood moving toward the lungs, the left atrium filling, the mitral valve opening, the left ventricle contracting, its force appropriate to the night's demand. All of this without a thought, without any attention needed. The body resting and the rhythm remaining. The rhythm in the chest, still there. The right atrium filling, the valves opening, closing, blood moving through the long vessels, the fingers somewhere distant, warm, the breath slower now, the lub-dub softer, still continuing, the electrical signal finding its pathway, the same pathway as it always has, something warm in the chest, the whole body settling, 4 chambers working, lub-dub, the chest warm, rising, falling, the valves closing, lub-dub, blood moving outward, the brain already drifting, territory without names, lub-dub, the 4 chambers continuing, the warmth still there, lub-dub, lub-dub.